pretty sure most of you use the internet every day. So I would also assume that at one point or another, you guys have hit a slow website or something like that, or you've gotten to a video that just won't buffer, and you probably just sat there and it feels like you're watching paint dry, basically. So this is usually not a common occurrence. Sometimes it happens at random times or for certain websites or videos. But what if this became the norm for specified or specific websites and services? And what about if you had to pay a premium service just to use certain websites or to use certain services, online services that were free before? This might sound a little crazy, but sadly with the current trend in internet regulation and legislation, we may be headed towards this path. Tonight I would like to bring your attention to the issue of the imminent threat to net neutrality in the US. Net neutrality, otherwise known as open internet, as defined by the Federal Communications Commission, is a level playing field where consumers can make their own choices about what applications and services to use, and where consumers are free to decide what content they want to access, create, or share with others. So this all sounds pretty great, so why would ISPs, or the big ones at least, or why are they fighting tooth and nail to prevent this net neutrality from occurring? That's basically the million-dollar question, and that's the question I'm hoping to answer today by providing you with a brief timeline of net neutrality, the effects of a closed internet upon society, and how net neutrality affects each one of us. Net neutrality is not a new concept, but it's one that's been adapted to the phenomenon that is the internet. So basically, it started with the telegram, and back then you would have basic unfiltered content. You could contact anyone. You could have anything in it. And then this idea later extended into phone lines, which also followed the same thing. You can call anyone and say anything without really much interruption. You would think that it would be common sense to follow up and put this into the internet since we use it for communication. However, this is not what happened. On October 1st, 2002, the FCC made the decision to classify cable internet access and DSL as information services rather than telecommunication services. This meant that the internet was now treated differently from common carriers, like telegrams and phone lines, which are similar to utilities. This essentially means that now the internet was left unregulated past that point. Fast forward to 2007, and Comcast was accused of interfering with BitTorrent through blocking and throttling. After first they denied that they were doing anything, but after conclusive evidence came out that they were in fact interfering with BitTorrent, the FCC decided they wanted to punish them for their discriminatory actions. This almost immediately led to Comcast filing an appeal in the DC Circuit Court. In 2010, the court ruled in Comcast's favor, citing that due to the classification of internet service providers, they cannot be basically punished for discriminatory actions. Now at this point, the FCC they realized that they need to change up their policies, their reclassification, but they didn't, and they continued the way they are. And instead, they issued an arbitrary open internet rules, which basically states that ISPs should have transparency, no blocking, and no unreasonable discrimination. This almost immediately led to Verizon to file an appeal in the DC court in 2011. So fast forward again to this year, and the case was finally settled on January 14th, and the DC court again favored Verizon, and the FCC lost again. This is basically where we're at right now, and we're here in 2014, and we still have an unregulated internet. So that's the background. So basically, what does it all mean for the future of society, mainly for competition within the online sphere? So what we're witnessing right now is what happens when ISPs go unchecked. I don't know, some of you might have heard about Netflix being charged an internet connection fee. That's what they call it. So basically, what they're doing right now, ISPs, is that they're acting as gatekeepers, kind of deciding what content go through and what doesn't. So what happened is Netflix has basically been coerced by Comcast into paying what they call an internet connection fee, and that's just, that's not a real thing. They just call it that. What they were doing is they were purposely slowing down Netflix's service. So they were either blocking it or slowing it down significantly, up until Netflix finally caved in. In a blog post by the Netflix CEO, Reed Hastings, he said, "Some big ISPs are extracting a toll because they can. They effectively control access to millions of consumers and are willing to sacrifice the interests of their own customers to press Netflix and others to pay." This is really nothing more than legalized racketeering, because it's not necessary. They're just taking it for no reason. Although Netflix was able to pay it off since they're very wealthy, if this occurred to the hundreds of thousands of smaller services or startups, they would immediately be demolished because they couldn't survive in that kind of environment. And I guess to kind of put this in perspective, what's happening right now is, imagine you take a taxi to your favorite restaurant or something. If you end up going there, you're getting out of the taxi, and you pay $20 or something. But at the same time, the driver comes out, goes to the restaurant, and then charges them another $20 just for bringing you there. It really doesn't make sense, but that's what's happening. The driver's already been paid, being the ISP, has already been paid by you. But at the same time, they're double dipping basically, so they're taking profit from just because they're delivering it. And then also with the $45 billion merger between number one ISP Comcast and Time Warner Cable, and Comcast also being the owners of NBC, we can only expect this unprecedented media empire to continue to stifle net neutrality and competition unregulated, because they're just too big at this point. At this point, common sense would dictate that giving unchecked powers to a content and internet provider like Comcast would be bad for competition, but it'll also soon to be bad for us. It'll prove to be bad for us. We're still kind of in the start, so I think we'll see a lot of damage happen later. We're now at a time where, according to Pew Research Internet Project, 70% of American adults 18 years and older have high-speed broadband connection at home, with another 10% only having smartphones, meaning only 20% of Americans don't have broadband connections or smartphones, with I think 3 of those 20% are still on DSL. These figures will continue to increase. That was from 2013, so we're going to continue to see a rise in the internet users. And the internet is no longer a luxury that we use for just entertainment or play some flash games or stuff like that. It's become a commodity, and it's just almost as important as water and electricity, basically. It's a utility at this point because we can't really function without it. If net neutrality continues to be compromised, we as consumers can expect big ISPs to begin implementing their cable TV bundle models to the internet. So what I was saying before, like if you had to pay for a website, ISPs have been gradually losing profit every single year in the cable TV industry, and they know it's a dying industry. They're very aware that it's going to collapse at one point. So what they're trying to do is make up profit somewhere else. So to them, this is a golden opportunity, because if they get control of any content, then they could privatize certain websites. So they could buy websites, and like, let's say you have Verizon, you can't use, Facebook, and Comcast could use it, and stuff like that. Or they could sell them in bundles. They can now sell data packages, and they're already basically a monopoly, because you usually only have 1 to 2 options in an area, and maybe only 1 in most places. Really, and on top of that, on top of charging us more, it can be very dangerous, because now they have control over all private information, and they could simply sell information, just like basically what Google does is they sell information, but it's not the same, because now they have all the information that's going through, so they could sell to the highest bidder if they want to make more profit. So, as I was saying in the start, basically the scenarios that sounded pretty crazy in the start could be real in the end. We don't know yet, but CEOs have already spoken about it, and patents have already been made in regards to some of these ideas. The internet and its contents should not have any overlords that decide what content is acceptable. And net neutrality is an issue that needs to be solved now, because if we let them set precedents now, bad ones, then we're going to have to deal with it in the future. And as Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the World Wide Web, stated, threats to the internet, such as companies or governments that interfere with or snoop on internet traffic, compromise basic human network rights. And that's what I think is what we need to do, because it's an issue that we're going to have to deal with, our generation especially, since we're the most likely people to be using the internet every day.